Hey, this is Chris with Make 3D. Are you frustrated with the auto support feature in Chitubox? You know, the one that doesn't work? Yeah, I'm going to show you a way around that. We're going to use the auto support feature in Prusa, and then we'll bring the model back into Chitubox and add any additional supports we may need. In the end, we'll end up with a model that's clean, that doesn't have any damage, and the supports will peel right off. So are you ready? Let's make 3D.
Okay, you're going to want to go to the Prusa Slicer download page, and I'll provide the link in the description. Go to Drivers and Apps. You want to accept all defaults. Okay, when you first fire it up, it'll give you this download wizard, and you're going to want to select Prusa MSLA, and then select the original Prusa SL1, and then just click through. Okay, and then here in printer settings, you're going to want to select the Prusa SL1. Expert mode over here. Now we're going to go through all these tabs and make sure we're on expert. There's the build plate for the SL1. So now we can go in and set up these print settings for the Elegoo Mars. You want to go into supports, and you're going to want to change the support head front diameter to 0.1. The support head front diameter is the part of the support that touches the model, so you're going to want that to be as small as possible. 0.1 is a good number. Support head penetration is the depth that the support is going to penetrate the model. I put that at 0.1. You can leave all these other defaults. A pad is the same as a raft in Chitubox, and I like to use a pad. Some people don't like to use them. I like to use a pad because it makes it easier to clean up the supports when I'm taking them off the build plate. They all come off, the pad comes off in one piece, and all the supports are usually connected to the pad. It just makes it easier for cleanup. If you don't want to use a pad, uncheck that box. Material settings, we don't need to bother with this because we're not using the slicer. For the printer, we're going to use Chitu to slice it, so we don't need to worry about this. Okay, we want to set these printer settings so that the Prusa software emulates the build volume of the Elegoo Mars. Max print height, that's the height of the build volume, and in the case of the Elegoo Mars, it's 155 millimeters. The display width in millimeters, that's the physical display width, it's 115.06 millimeters. The display height is 65.02 millimeters. The display the number of pixels in the display is 2560 by 1440. And then we want to set the display orientation at landscape. and then you want to leave all. One other thing I wanted to show you here in the print settings is the object elevation. This would be the same as the Z lift height in Chitubox. And then right here I have it set to 0, but I'll show you why in a minute. And that's it. You're all set up. Oh, one other thing you want to do is you want to save these settings. So I'm going to save this, the printer settings, as an Elegoo Mars. And then the print settings, I just want to save this as the default name, which would be normal. I'll just call this normal Mars. Okay, we're all set to start adding supports to our model. Okay, I chose some pretty high detail models to demonstrate the auto supports in Prusa with. The first one is this Xenomorph alien model by Printed Obsession. It's on MyMiniFactory. A really detailed model. And then the other one is this Skull Snail by Zane Rogers on MyMiniFactory. Okay, the alien xenomorph, we don't need to hollow it out, so I'm just going to bring it right into Prusa. I use the mouse wheel to zoom in and out, the left mouse button to rotate, and the right mouse button to move. And this model's 90 degrees off, so I'm going to rotate it 90 degrees. Here's the rotate tool here. And then I'm going to rotate this a little bit back. And then you can see I'm outside of the build volume here, so I'm going to scale this down. You do that by grabbing these squares here. Move it. Scale it just a little more. Get the claws in there. There we go. Now it's all green, which means you're within the build volume. So we're all set to add auto supports. The auto support tool is right here. Takes a few minutes to come up. Oh, you have to grab the model and then hit auto support, the auto support tool. Okay, here's the auto support panel. You see we've got minimal point distance. That's the spread between the supports. I set that at a minimum of 1 millimeter. The support point density, that's how much you want to cover the model with supports. And I usually just do 74%, 75%. And then you want to double check that your head diameter is 0.1, which is what we set it to in the settings. Now I'm going to add supports. You hit this button, auto generate points. It slices the model and adds the supports. And now slicing is complete. And what you want to do now is you want to export export plate as STL including supports. So that's what I'm going to do. And save this as okay. Down here it's telling us now that the object is outside the build volume, but that's because it raised it 5 millimeters and it added the supports. We're not going to worry about that because we can scale it in Chitubox to make sure it's within the build volume again. So what you can do also is I'm going to remove the supports. As you see, there's a pad below here. I'm going to go ahead and remove all the supports. And you can choose this. If you don't want to use a pad, just choose none up here. And then you can regenerate the supports again. Generating the supports. See, now here's what it looks like without a pad or a raft. This kind of makes it difficult to clean the build plate or to get the print off the build plate, because all these little pieces break off and you end up with all these little dots and a bunch of different little tiny pieces of supports to clean up when you're done. I just, like I said, I prefer to have a pad or a raft around this so that I can get it all off in one piece. And I'll show you that when I take the supports off. Okay, now I'm going to go into Chitubox, or Chitubox as some people call it. I'm going to drop in that exported model with the Prusa supports on it. And once again, it's 90 degrees off. I'm going to rotate this by 90 degrees. You can just type it in here. 90 degrees. Now zooming in and out in Chitubox is the same as in Prusa, but the mouse buttons are reversed. It's the right mouse button to rotate and the left mouse button to move. In Prusa, it's the other way around. So you can see we're outside of the build volume here, and I'm just going to scale it again. See what scale to fit doesn't work. I'm going to reverse that. I'm going to scale it manually. There we go. So now we're all set to slice in Chitubox. And you can add supports if you want. If you can go through here, and if you've decided that Prusa hasn't done a good enough job and you need to add some more supports, you can do that. Like, I'll show you. If you want to say you weren't happy with a support here, you could add one here. And I'm using 3D Printing Pro's settings in here. I'll leave you a link to his video, but I basically punched in all of his settings in here, and it works great. I mean, all the supports come right off, even if you're just using Chitu auto supports. I highly suggest you watch his video. I'll leave you the link to it. So now we can slice this and print it. Okay, for the skull snail, I'm going to need to hollow it out first in Chitubox. So I'm just going to drag it in. And it's tiny, but I can do a scale to fit here. And I'm going to rotate this a little bit. So that most of the supports end up on the flat side here underneath. And then I'm going to move it so that it's on the build plate. And I always look at the shadows to make sure that it's within the build plate parameters. It looks good there. And also, if you hover over this slice button, you can see the entire build plate parameter, or the build volume parameters. I'm going to go ahead and hollow this out. For larger models, I like a 3mm wall thickness, and you're going to want to hollow out the inner part of the model. Okay, now I'm going to add some drain and breather holes here. Breather holes keep suction from forming on the FEP, and you can get a suction cup effect that will cause the FEP to pull the model off of the build plate if you don't put a hole to relieve that suction, at least a couple of holes to relieve that suction. And then when you finish with your print, you're going to want to drain the uncured resin that's on the inside of the model. So I'm going to add some holes here. I'm going to put a small one right here. The breather hole also allows you to drain the resin out quickly, because if you only have one hole, you're not going to get the resin out. You need to add a couple, at least a couple. And I'm going to add a couple of larger holes in the back because I have the room. And I'm also going to shine a UV flashlight up into these holes to cure the uncured resin after I drain it. I want to cure the inside of the model a little bit so that it's not all sticky in there. So these are big enough for me to be able to shine some UV light up in there. And they make pretty big drain holes. So okay, once I'm done with that, I want to export this model. You do a save as in Chitubox, and you want to save it as an STL. I actually called this skull slug by accident. It's skull snail. And wait until this is done. It's writing the file. It takes a while. You don't want to try to import this back into Prusa while it's open in Chitu, because it's going to cause Prusa to crash, which just happened to me. Okay, it's written successfully. I'm going to go into Prusa. Then I'm going to drop that model in. Once again, I need to rotate it 90. It's green, so that shows that I'm within the build volume here. And now I'm going to use a pad. So I've got below object in the pad here. I'm going to go to the add supports. I'm going to double check my settings. 1mm minimal points distance. That's the distance between supports. I want to set this to 74. Check manual editing. We want a head diameter 0.1. That's good. Now I'm going to generate supports. Down here you see the status. Now it's generating supports. Now after it adds the supports, it's going to raise this model up 5 millimeters, which it's done. And we get this error again outside the print area. But we're not going to worry about that. We're just going to go ahead and export it because we can scale it again in Chitubox. Export plate as STL including supports. Okay, you want to make sure that the file's been completely written before you try to bring it back into Chitubox. So wait till you see a confirmation down here that the file's been written, because you can't bring it in to Chitu unless it's done writing the file. So we'll go into Chitubox here, and I'm going to go ahead and drop that file with the Prusa supports on it. And once again, I'm 90 degrees off. I'm going to rotate this by 90. And it looks like we're within the build perimeters here. I see a little bit of, this pad or raft is going outside a little bit, but it'll just get cut off. But everything else is within the perimeter. And then, you can preview that again by hovering over the slice button. I've found that generally the Prusa auto supports work, but if you're not comfortable with, the lack of support here, you could, or wherever, you can add, again, you can add your own support. So for example, I'm just going to add some light supports along here. You could add heavy supports too, but the light supports tend to work pretty well. And we'll do it underneath the model where it's not really visible. The more supports, the better, especially in areas where you can't see detail. All right, so I'm pretty happy with this. We can slice this for printing now. Just going to go ahead and slice it. All right, guys, I hope this video has helped you out. Please leave comments and let me know how it went if you try this out. And like, share, subscribe, and we'll see you in the next video. Until then, go make 3D.